Well, welcome everybody to Fasting Transformation Summit, where we are uncovering the most ancient, inexpensive, and powerful healing strategy known to mankind. We're talking about fasting. And I'm your host, Dr. David Jockers, and I'm excited about today's interview because we're going to go into cancer, the idea of, basically the metabolic theory of cancer. And really, we've been told that cancer was a genetic disease for so long that we really weren't given much hope other than conventional medical therapies. And with what's happening with science and also just healing breakthroughs that are going on with a lot of different practitioners, we're realizing that that's just not the case, and that fasting and ketosis can actually be really powerful tools to help in preventing cancer, and also modalities that we can utilize, lifestyle interventions that we can utilize in order to overcome cancer. If we want to do, natural therapies, or if we want to do it in combination with conventional therapies. And so I brought on a good friend of mine who also happens to be an expert in this area. This is Dr. Nasha Winters. And Dr. Nasha is the founder, CEO, and visionary of Optimal Terrain Consulting. She's a nationally board certified naturopathic doctor, licensed acupuncturist, and a fellow of the American Board of Naturopathic Oncology. She lectures all over the world, training physicians in the application of mistletoe therapy and consulting with researchers on projects involving immune modulation via mistletoe, hyperthermia, and a ketogenic diet. She lives in Durango, Colorado. We were just talking about how there's snow out there right now. I'm in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia here, and doing this interview in October, and it's like absolutely beautiful. It's like perfect time of year out here. She's in Colorado in the snow. She loves that. I don't. That's why I live in the South. Her book, which she co-authored with Jess Higgins Kelly, is The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. Amazing book. I highly recommend it. One of the best books I read this year. And that's why I invited her on to my Keto Edge Summit, as well as this fasting summit, because she is a pioneer in this area and just a wealth of knowledge, and also just has an incredible personality that's very endearing. And so, Dr. Nasha, thanks for being on the Fasting Transformation Summit. And I am saying your name right?
You are rocking it.
Because I know everybody gets that wrong.
Exactly. It is now emblazoned into your brain.
That's right. Well, tell us your story and how you got into this.
Sure. Well, my experience is pretty basic. I had a diagnosis that left me with no options. Unfortunately, I had a lot of symptoms. I had a lot of illnesses and a lot of health issues in my youth. And so part of that, I think, is what kept me sort of in the dark about what was going on for me, because it was sort of normal for me to have major digestive issues and pain patterns and hormonal patterns and period patterns, that it just sort of evaded my attention for some time. It was more of just the same. By the time it really started getting bigger and louder and landed me in an emergency room several times a month over several months before the official diagnosis, just shy of my 20th birthday, so I was 19 at the time, of a terminal ovarian cancer process, I was so sick and so far gone that my organs were in failure. I was filled with ascites. I was terribly cachectic. And they knew that even pulling the fluid out of my belly could possibly kill me because of the fluid shift. And they also knew that chemotherapy at the stage where my organs were at that time would have absolutely killed me. So they basically said, you're going to die either way. You've got a few months at best. And of course, I now know that I probably had a few weeks at best from what I know of the condition that I was in. And they said, pretty much get your affairs in order. We can't even offer you therapy at this time. So sometimes when we're given no options, it opens up many options. And so it set me on a journey 27 years later, as of October 21st of 2018. I have been learning and applying what I've learned to my body, as well as tens of thousands of patients over these years. And that was informed fully by one of the things I stumbled upon in my small, relatively underfunded liberal arts school. At the time, I stumbled upon an outdated textbook talking about the work of Dr. Otto Warburg and the metabolic approach to cancer. And from everything I was learning and reading at that time, that is the one thing that jumped out at me and stuck with me. Also at that time, I started learning about naturopathic medicine. I was on my way to conventional medical school. That was my goal, my journey, my vision. Obviously, my life had a different plan. And I started running across the ancient works of people like Benedict Lust and other kind of pioneers of the naturopathic medical field, which utilized fasting as a means to heal the body. Of course, we didn't know about autophagy and even mitochondria, at that time of their work in the earlier 1800s. But what we now know today, when we look at the work of these pioneers way ahead of us, is they were onto something. And unfortunately, thanks to things like Watson and Crick and the DNA understanding of our, of like moving in that direction of disease as a DNA issue, as a broken gene issue, we kind of left a lot of these pieces behind. But I'm here to tell you, at that age, when I was so sick, and when you have that much cachexia, you are a body that looks and feels like you're 9 months pregnant or beyond, you don't have room for food. So my ability to eat was non-existent. And frankly, I think I went in almost a 30-day fast in the beginning because I was so sick, anything I put down came back up. So I was able to utilize accidentally, out of sheer necessity, an old tool that you are doing an entire summit about right now.
Absolutely. Now, I want to go into more detail on cachexia and cancer and fasting as we go through. So we definitely want to come back to that, because obviously a lot of people that are dealing with cancer are dealing with cachexia, and the idea of fasting just seems so counterintuitive. So we'll definitely come back to that. But before we do that, the title of your book is Metabolic Approach to Cancer. And so what do you mean by the metabolic approach?
Well, the metabolic approach, there are multiple ways to get your energy system moving properly and being flexible to whatever conditions it meets. So when I talk about a metabolic approach to cancer, I'm talking about manipulating our chemistry back to the way nature intended. Okay, we have pretty much done everything against nature in living on the planet today. So things that affect our metabolic motor, of course, our first thought is food. So we've become pure sugar burners since the 1850s, when we started to process sugar and flour and started to put it in everything. In fact, we were all low carb before that time. About 30% of our calories came from carbohydrates, which today we would say, oh, that's a very low carb diet. Mm-hmm. Whereas today, an average of 70% of our diet is carbohydrates. So we've, in a short period of time, changed that engine, and where we should have been moving easily and effortlessly into burning sugars and burning fats and adapting in our environment and our world around us, we've now kind of gotten stuck in one gear. And that's where we've been, in the sugar burning gear. Add to that light. Okay, light has come on, and I should say fake light. Okay, so bringing on artificial light into our world has been just as detrimental to our burning of our metabolic engine as the food we ingest. And then things like just blue screen time in and of itself is far more toxic to the mitochondria than even probably sugar. So those are patterns. We're very out of rhythm, which when we're out of rhythm on our metabolism via sugar metabolism, and we're out of rhythm with our circadian rhythm from light-dark cycles, that throws off our hormones, our stress chemistry, our sleep, obviously our sleep patterns, our emotional well-being, our microbiome, our toxicant, ability to deal with toxicants in our world around us. It throws off the whole terrain. And so helping my patients understand what is off in their terrain and prioritize and start to address those and restore the rhythm in their lives helps to make them that metabolically flexible being who has a much better outcome, and to conventional therapies, to non-conventional therapies, and even for folks who are striving to prevent chronic illness and cancer overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very thorough. And I love the idea of the terrain, because in a sense, we're biological beings. And so the same concept of, if we're trying to grow a garden, the garden has essential needs, right? We need soil that has nutrients in it. We need water, right? Good, clean water. We need a non-toxic environment. We need sunshine, and we need love, right? And so, and so it's kind of that idea of, if we want to have a really good garden, right, we need that. And we can't have weeds overgrowing either, right? So you think about like infections and things like that. And so you use this idea of the terrain 10. Can you describe each of these 10 elements? You go into a lot more detail in your book, so people can pick that up, but I would love for you to touch on each of these elements so people really have a good understanding of kind of the holistic idea of our bodies and how it works together.
Absolutely. And I love that you precluded that with the garden analogy, because that's precisely why I use the terminology terrain. I resonate with nature. And I think my patients can understand, even if they're not gardeners, those metaphors go far. So the first of the terrain 10 patterns, and these are patterns that over 25, 26 years of my own journey and that of helping tens of thousands of patients, is the main 10 patterns that impact our ability to fight disease or contract disease. Okay, so it's pushing us into a continuum of health or dis-ease. So the number one piece is our epigenetics. And I believe you've talked about this in other discussions, both on this summit and previous, but basically that's what's been handed down to us from the generations above us, and things along the way in those previous generations, like a World War experience, so extreme trauma, can change our epigenetic, our genetic expression. A toxicant exposure. So a lot of our World War or our Vietnam vets have come home with a lot of damaged DNA that they've passed into their children because of things like Agent Orange exposure. Those are examples. DES in our mothers who were trying to prevent miscarriage, of the mothers between late 1940s to 1970s were kind of put on these hormones that changed their epigenetic expression and made their children more susceptible to cancers and other illnesses in the future. So those are some examples that, even though that might have been the deck of cards you were dealt in this lifetime, how you play them is entirely up to you, and we can change their expression with our diet and lifestyle. Part of that diet and lifestyle is the next piece, which is the sugar. We've already talked about why that's changed so much, where we went from 5 pounds on average of sugar per person per year to well over 175 pounds per person per year. It's like, just imagine how your car would run, dumping bags and bags of refined sugar into your gas tank. You might sputter down the road for a while, but it's not going to last long. And in essence, it's rusting us from the inside out, right? The next big thing that is very different to our humanity in the last 60 years or so is the toxicant exposures. We are swimming in them. I love that even, we all do our best to eat organic, but unfortunately things like glyphosate, Roundup, don't know those boundaries. They don't read signs and say organic, don't spray here, because they drift. They have a 2-mile drift. They have they infuse our water supply. They infuse our soil supply. And so that is what we're being exposed to constantly, even when you're doing the best you can. Plastics and other things have only been on the market for a short period of our human evolution, time here. So there's a lot of things. I think about 80,000 new chemicals since the 1960s, of which only about 200 of them have been properly tested. And we hadn't even really done the testing for how they accumulate and bounce off each other. Then it moves into how those chemicals and the foods we eat and our epigenetics are impacting our gut, our microbiome. Okay, this is huge. We have been monocropping our food sources for the past 50, 60 years, which, guess what, has monocropped our microbiome. And our health is really based on our microbiome diversity. So we have deconstructed the microbiome and monocropped ourselves as well, which has made us also more susceptible to disease process. Then we spill into the immune system. And in my world of cancer, that is critical. In fact, just a couple of years ago, most of my oncology colleagues, unfortunately, still deny the role of the immune system in treating cancer. But now that it's $1 billion drug industry, it's now all the rage. In fact, it won the Nobel Prize in Science this year. So it's something that I take extreme focus on in my patients, because you can push back the cancer all you want with any cytotoxic intervention, but if the immune system isn't intact, it will come back and back and back. That's why even the American Cancer Society statistics show that 70% of patients will have a recurrence after an initial diagnosis. To me, that's not okay. We got to do something different. Then after that, inflammation. We're an inflammation nation, right? And what used to kill us were diseases of infections. Today we die of diseases of inflammatory processes. Cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's. They're all very inflammatory conditions. And we're just inflamed thanks to a lot of the things I just talked to you about: the food sources, the water sources, the air sources, the immune disruptions, the medications, the toxicants, all those things are contributing. One of the bigger drivers of inflammation is sugar. right? So that's a biggie. Then we spill into blood circulation and something known as angiogenesis. So angiogenesis is the growth of new vasculature to a tumor. So basically it robs the body of its nutrients to give it directly to the tumor. They're greedy little buggers. They will divert all the attention and all the nourishment to themselves. And they particularly love low oxygen, and they particularly love lots of sugar. So you want to oxygenate the tissues, moving your body, exercising, saunaing, doing hyperbaric oxygen therapies that strongly oxygenate the tissues. CoQ10 is a really great way to oxygenate the tissue because it also helps the heart. It's heart food is what I tell my patients. So it helps them move better. So those are important. And if you sit on your butt all day, as most Americans do, we spend less than 15 minutes outdoors, and most of us don't have any exercise outside of walking to and from the kitchen or to and from our work, car to the work. That's a problem. So we want to move the body. And then that segues into hormones, which you can probably already see how these all connect. Not one of them is happening in a vacuum, but we are also swimming in a hormone soup today. So I had a conversation in an interview yesterday that there really isn't such thing as estrogen deficiency. It really doesn't exist. There's estrogen metabolism problems. Okay. There's epigenetic issues that influence how our body processes the hormones that we're being faced with. We're already having a problem because of certain SNPs with how our endogenous hormones work, but now we're swimming and competing with exogenous hormones that are far more aggressive in binding into the receptor site and way more difficult to kick out of the building. So that makes us feel like we need more hormones. So we're just layer caking and causing more problems. And really, we're just in a soup of it, from the plastics to the endocrine disrupting chemicals to the body care products that are very endocrine disrupting. Our body is just covered with millions of mouths. Our skin is our largest organ of elimination and absorption, and we are smothering it with these chemicals that are changing our epigenetics and changing our hormone expression. And then the final two, to me, are very woven in together is circadian rhythm, which won the Nobel Prize in 2017. And I should also add that for sugar, 2016's Nobel Prize went to autophagy, which is the entire experience of what we're talking about today. But circadian rhythm and being out of rhythm is very damaging to our immune system, to our hormone system, to our psychology, to our microbiome, everything. And that is often triggered by stressors from the environment and our response to stress. So it's also impossible to get away from stress today. And we are swimming in that as well. And then, of course, all of these things impact our psyche, our mental emotional health, which is the 10th, and our mental emotional health impacts those other 9 terrain items. We know things like having an elevated ACE score, so an adverse childhood event score, anything basically over 2 out of 10 yeses on that questionnaire increases your likelihood of cancer and chronic illness into your adulthood. And these are 10 things that you would have been exposed to before the age of 18. So we know that shock, trauma, neglect, abuse absolutely changes our ability to fight disease. And if you then are staying in an abusive relationship or a toxic work environment, how can you possibly heal when you're being met with those types of things every day? So that was a big one, kind of blasted out.
I'm glad that I asked that question though, because I've been in this industry for a long time, right? 10 years practicing, probably 20 years studying it. And I've heard so many different people categorize all the, major causes, right? Contributing factors in chronic disease. But I don't think I've actually heard somebody categorize it as well as you have. So I really appreciate that. And, it's really a masterpiece, the book that you wrote, categorizing that. And you're just such a great spokesperson for it. And so by addressing the terrain 10, and you're using this metabolic approach, what kind of results are you seeing with your patients?
Unbelievable results. I mean, because I'm also a pretty obsessive blood test person. So I don't guess. I tell my patients, we test, we assess, we address, we retest, and we adapt as we need to. So we, for the most part, are looking at people's labs monthly, and at the very least every 3 months, so quarterly. Yeah. So we are watching our results in real time, and we are watching patterns completely resolve in real time. It can happen in a matter of days, as we've seen when we've done immersion retreats, cancer retreats where we've done their labs, basic CBC, CMP, and what my patients call the trifecta, LDH, CRP, and sed rate, right before we do our retreat, and then test it a week or two after and see that we've changed parameters drastically, okay, from inflammation to blood sugar to like overall immune function, nutrient absorption, organ function, et cetera. We can see that in just days of what we can change. And one of the things that kind of segues into what we're going to be talking about is one of the most profound ways to change your labs very quickly is a 3-day fast. Okay. And there's a multiple way to do that. 3-day water fast, 3-day dry fast, 3-day bone broth fast. Those are things that can still help the body change its blood content, its physiologic content, literally within a matter of days.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so powerful. And so let's go into that. How can fasting be used as a tool for somebody? Let's say somebody has a family history of cancer. Like I have a family history of cancer, and I actually had developed skin cancer as well at 28. And this is one of the motivating factors for me to put my body into a state of ketosis, utilize this metabolic approach, right? And I actually had found Dr. Thomas Seyfried's work in 2011, right? Yeah. And, started applying that and had great results for myself personally. And so now I just apply it, number one, to prevent disease, but also actually number two, to thrive, right? I personally thrive utilizing this sort of fasting ketogenic style lifestyle. And so if somebody's out there and they have a family history of cancer, how could they apply fasting and how could that help prevent cancer?
Well, if you don't have, if you are just completely new to this and you're still pretty attached to the standard American diet, and you don't know really what your labs look like and you don't really know what your overall health is, first of all, I would really strongly recommend you get someone on your team to make sure you are safe to do something like this, to embark on something like this. So a chiropractic physician, a naturopathic physician, a functional medicine practitioner, a nutritionist, a functional therapeutic nutritionist, not an RD nutritionist. I'm sorry, but you have to qualify. And I've got a lot of RD nutritionist recovering friends who will also celebrate that. But basically, you need someone who has some nutritional training, which you don't get from your medical doctors, okay? Unfortunately, it's just not part of their curriculum. So, and some of them have gone on and studied on their own. Obviously, we have a lot of colleagues who definitely enhanced that knowledge base, but for the most part, it's going to be hard to find. So make sure you're set with somebody along those lines. But what's a very safe place to start is simply what I call a 13-hour-a-day fast. And this is based on basic studies, even in the last 6 months from places like MD Anderson, simply showing that women, we're not even talking about what they're eating. Okay, we're just simply saying they have a range of 13 hours where they're putting nothing into their body. Yeah. So that literally means finishing dinner, say 7 p.m., and not eating again till 8 a.m., right? So you're sleeping through the lion's share of that time. And what they have been able to show is simply, we're not tweaking anything else but that alone lowers their risk of recurrence. And this is over 40,000, I believe, women that were studied for this. Lowers their risk of recurrence by 70% compared to someone who's having that late night snack or eating right when they bolt out of bed in the morning or even wake in the middle of the night hungry and need to eat. In fact, if you have to have a snack or wake up hungry or have to eat right in the morning, that is your first clue that you are metabolically inflexible. Okay. Yeah. We should all be able to easily and effortlessly go 13 hours without eating. Yeah. And if you can't, you definitely need someone on your team to start digging under the hood. That's the first starting point. That's an easy one. And then if you want to start to push it a little bit, I have my patients. So a cancer patient who's in a stable place in my practice, who's just like, I want to keep, getting good response to my treatments. I want to keep this at bay. I want to keep things stable. I want to keep pushing back the, progression. We do a 13-hour every day. Twice a week, we do a 16 to 18-hour fast. So that's eating in a 6 to 8 hour window twice a week. And then once a month, we do a 3-day fast. For those that are a bit depleted or scared of fasting, I have them bring on bone broth, really good, high quality, organic, clean bone broth, preferably homemade, but there's a few companies that I like out there in the freezer section that are actually quite good, thoughtful about their process. And of course, as much water, as much sea salt, and as much herbal tea as they want. Most people get through that first day and they're like, I don't need any more bone broth. They feel great. It's a psychological issue for sure. That is sort of their ongoing maintenance program. People like Dr. Longo's work, and what I definitely do with people who are doing chemo, like chemo maybe every 3 weeks or every month, is have them do the 5-day protocol. Yeah. Now, Dr. Longo's work has brought on the Prolon fasting mimicking diet approach. That works very nicely for folks who are petrified of not eating anything, or who have doctors that are really pushing back on them doing this. So it's kind of our meeting you halfway approach, right?
Yeah,
but
it's
again,
kind of a crutch to help somebody. Yeah.
It's like what, $250 a month?
Yeah.
So I'm like, you could do this for free or at the cost of bone broth, right?
Right.
But again, that's available. And what we've seen with that is that alone, it works better than the chemo. Yeah. The chemo with that enhances, it's like an incredible burst of it, because it's helping the body get through the treatment, have less side effects, and actually sort of drive the treatment into those now vulnerable cancer cells. Cancer cells can't adapt like our healthy cells can. Right. So if they get too cold or too hot, or they get too hungry, too depleted of certain nutrients, they're vulnerable. So when you bring on a ketogenic state, whether that was induced by fasting or a fasting mimicking diet or ketone salts or high fat, low carb ketogenic diet, there's multiple ways to get there. You make those cells very vulnerable. And so it's like that ketone state is the Trojan horse carrying in the death missile to those cells.
Yeah, it's that press pulse concept, right? By Dr. Thomas Seifert. So metabolically pressing the cancer with basically fasting, or a ketogenic approach or a fasting mimicking diet, like you were talking about, calorie restricted kind of plant-based ketogenic approach, which is what the fasting mimicking diet is. And then we're pulsing it with some sort of really strong oxidative therapy, in this case, chemotherapy or radiation. It becomes so much more effective.
It does. And, just to add to that, there have been plenty of studies, and talking to my radiation oncology colleagues that are hip to this way of approaching cancer, of which there's a growing sort of force of them to be reckoned with, which is fabulous. But we absolutely know without a doubt that sugar desensitizes, insulin and sugar desensitizes our cancer cells to radiation.
Yeah.
We also know that it desensitizes to a lot of other therapies, including aromatase inhibitors and androgen deprivation therapies, PARP inhibitors, a lot of our targeted therapies, and likely our chemotherapy. We just haven't done the studies in there to know, but I can tell you from clinical experience, people's labs sure look different when they're fasting with their treatments, and their side effects and symptoms and their rate of recovery and their quality of life through the process is absolutely better. When I speak to my colleagues who are nurses, oncology nurses in my own community, they always say they know who my patients are. They're like, I don't even have to ask. I know by how they're looking, how they're feeling, how easily they maintain their schedule through treatment, how quickly they bounce back, how positive and energetic they are, what they're eating when they come in or not eating when they come in. They're like, I know who you're seeing. And that population of oncology nurses are also waking up around the country and seeing the difference as the patients are gathered around together. It's visually incredibly apparent, as well as what they also see in the labs and how well the patients are tolerating therapy. We don't have to wait for, expensive long-term studies to tell us this. We're seeing it in real life, in real time.
Yeah, dozens of case studies. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so if somebody's going in for chemotherapy, let's say they've got a week to prepare. What do you have them do? So, we're doing this interview on a Thursday. Next Thursday at 11 a.m., they've got their first chemotherapy treatment. What should they do over the next week? I mean, you talked about getting a functional practitioner. So let's just say they start working on that. But what can they do at home to prepare their body?
I love this. Simply speaking, get all of the heavy carbohydrates out from the get-go. We don't even have to restrict beyond that. At this point, when someone's brand new, I'm not even looking at urine ketones, right? I'm not looking at blood ketones yet. I'm not looking at macros yet. Let's just get simple. Let's have you, if we only have a week to prepare, I want you off all grains, all legumes, all sugary fruit. I'm not even going to pull out berries or small Granny Smith apples at this point, because that's sometimes a ripping off of the Band-Aid that's too much, and that's a little crutch for people. I also try and get them to pull off alcohol, and if they must have alcohol, dry farmed wines, a little bit, maybe a shot of tequila, a shot of non-grain-based vodka. If they have to have that, like I work with people who are pretty much like boozeaholics and fast food junkies. And so we start where they are. Okay. So let's just say you're the standard American person coming in. That's how I do it. Pull that out, not even restrict anything else. Okay. Then the day you go in for treatment, maybe 20, 30 minutes prior to the treatment, if you're brand new to my world, maybe take a ketone salt. 20, 30 minutes to at least drive you, kind of fake it till you make it, drive you into a low, more of a, even at least a nutritional state of ketosis, a therapeutic state, to allow your cancer cells to be more vulnerable to those therapies coming in. When I have, let's say, a month, that's when after the week, I start having them check their urine ketones. At that point, they should, especially if they're doing the 13-hour fast every day, that would also be part of that first week. Maybe now we're incorporating 2 days of 16 fast a day, and we're starting to check the urine. And once we see moderate to high ketones in the urine, then we know we can graduate on to blood ketones. Now, if someone's dealing with a stage 1 or 2 cancer, maybe we are going to strive for a nutritional ketosis, which is 3 and anything below 3 on blood ketones. If someone's got a very aggressive process, and especially a brain cancer process, I want them in a therapeutic level. So above 3 on the blood ketones, that would be our goal, working towards that. But now these folks are already starting to become more metabolically flexible. Then we start to have them play with things like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal and start to put in their macros so they can learn, because everyone thinks they don't eat sugar until you start to put your stuff into that. So even RDA nutritionists say we should be eating less than 100 grams of carbohydrates a day, men 25 grams or less of sugar a day, and women 20 grams or less of sugar a day. Most of us are eating all of that by breakfast, the end of breakfast, every single day, right? So that's just like RD nutritionist recommendations. But if you're dealing with cancer, it is very important, even if you're not in ketosis, to get yourself below 50 grams of carbohydrate a day, below 20 grams of sugar a day. If you're really trying to strive for a state of metabolic flexibility, you want to maybe even push that lower, maybe below 30 and 10. Those are kind of the places you play with. But any step you take in that direction is going to make a very positive difference. It does not have to be perfect to be effective.
Oh, that's a great word right there, right? You don't have to be perfect. You may not have to be in the therapeutic range to get the benefit. Now, let's say somebody's been, going at this for a while, right? Following a lot, maybe they've listened to a lot of these summits, they're following a ketogenic diet, right? They still have cancer, they're doing the chemotherapy. Okay, let's say they have it tomorrow. Okay, what would be kind of your ideal fast? Would it be like a 16-hour fast before 18, 24? Is there any research on, kind of the, I guess you could say the minimal dose, right? The I don't know how to say it, but like the amount of time where you get the most benefit, right, before chemotherapy as far as fasting, and then after that, it's pretty much the same benefit. Minimal required dose, I think is what
I like. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So actually, we do have some of that data, which is pretty cool. Again, thanks to longevity researchers like people like Dr. Longo. A quick little side note there is all the longevity researchers around the world have absolutely shown that caloric restriction and being a bit underweight actually enhances your longevity versus the opposite. So just throwing that onto the table when people start to freak, because in the oncology world, the last thing they want you to do is quote unquote lose weight.
Right.
Well, I'd like to circle back to that in cachexia in a bit, but specifically to what you're discussing, the perfect goal. So I give my patients like the gold, the silver, and the bronze. Okay. So the gold would be if you have chemo at 11 a.m. on Thursday morning, your last meal is at 11 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Okay. That's your last meal. Yeah. And then you're coming into chemo fully fasted.
Yeah.
You're going to fast that entire day, and you're going to then break the fast so if you had it Thursday morning, I have my patients break the fast Saturday morning at 11 a.m. So that is a 5-day fast. That is based on the research of Dr. Longo. That is also based on the Prolon, therapy mimicking diet that he offers that covers that window as well. You can do it with water. You can do it with, I do not recommend dry fasting at all for my cancer. Your electrolytes are way too funky. So I want to put that on the table. But you can definitely do it with water, herbal teas, and often bone broths, especially if they're on some things that are really depleting their electrolytes during this time. Plus, if you're on keto, you're depleting your electrolytes. So it's nice to have the bone broths for my folks that are a bit vulnerable. But once you get a little good at it, you actually, a lot of people don't even want or crave the bone broths after a while, which is great. But ultimately, that's gold. Silver would be last meal on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Then you have chemo at 11 a.m. on Thursday, and then you break the fast at 11 a.m. on Friday. So kind of day before, day of, day after type, kind of circled around that. That's the silver platform. There's still so much happening in that time of what you're changing in your chemistry. It's quite brilliant. But the bronze, if you will, sort of where you can get the still some bang for your buck, would be a 16-hour fast prior. So you have that 11 a.m., just back that up that your last meal is sometime in the mid-afternoon.
Right. For early dinner the night before. Yeah. Hydrate well the morning of.
Exactly. Take your mug of bone broth if you're scared to the chemo. But definitely something with a lot of, hot tea and things that are very nurturing. I love to drink ginger tea. But that's how I would do it.
How about some exogenous ketones too? I know you had mentioned that. So that's another thing that they can do maybe beforehand.
Especially if they're hungry, shaky, that will kind of pop them out of it pretty quickly. And like a pack of those, there's lots of different brands out there, but if you call for a typical dose, often my patients only need like a quarter to even half of that just to kind of prime the pump a little bit, just kind of clear the brain, clear the shakies, because they might, especially if they're new to this, they might be going through a little carb withdrawal at the same time. So the ketone can really help them get over that hurdle. Really.
Yeah, and typically the ketone salts usually have a bunch of electrolytes in them, right? So you get kind of the benefit there, plus the ketones go up. And so that can be really, that's going to reduce the inflammasome. So like when you get that chemotherapy in there, that can be a nice little crutch for you. So
I love it. And I definitely, even if I have folks in robust levels of ketosis, therapeutic ketosis, even before an oxidative therapy like hyperbaric, radiation, hyperthermia, IV vitamins, high dose IV vitamin C, I would have them take 20, 30 minutes before ketone salts. I want them really topped in those oxidative therapies like that, because those go in hard and come out pretty fast. And so take advantage of that with the ketones. It really is protective to the whole, but also really drives those therapies because they tend to have a lot of fallout, a lot of tumor lysis, a lot of cytokine release, and that can just feel yucky. So that will pop through the yuckies. Yeah,
I really like that.
You would need some ketones.
Oh, can you hear my little one?
It's okay. It's good for me. I was just cracking because I was laughing about your little one and my dogs that are wandering around.
I got twin. They're at this point. By the time the summit runs, they'll be 3, right? So they turn 3 December 31st. Yeah, and then I also have a 5-month-old as well. And so, so this house is, there's always somebody crying, right, in the house.
Usually you and your wife, I'm assuming.
That's right. Well, I will tell you that, having 3 kids under 3 is a lot of work, and using fasting has really helped because like my energy is amazing. My productivity is incredible. People are like, how are you doing so much? And, being there for your family. In years past, it would have just totally dragged me out, right? I would have been so burnt out, but fasting has really supported me. And, no matter what kind of stress I'm under, it's like, I just feel so resilient and the fasting lifestyles help. And that's one of the reasons why I was inspired to do this summit here. And so you've given us some really great advice as far as how people can apply fasting, particularly when it comes to cancer and cancer therapies. So let's talk about, because, we want to touch base also on cachexia, because obviously, and I have a patient going through this right now where she's very, very, very thin. Okay. And, she's very, very worried about fasting at this point. And so, the thought would be, well, if you fast, you're going to lose even more weight. Okay. And of course the doctor's saying, doesn't matter what you eat, just eat a lot. right? And you just need to gain weight and you need your energy, right? So you need to eat for your energy. And so what are your thoughts on that?
First of all, so wrong on so many levels. It's hard for me not to even throw F-bombs or what the hell bombs on these. So, but it's insane because we actually have loads of evidence showing that the way that suggestion we've given to cachexic patients for 50 years in oncology has never worked, ever.
Yeah.
You eat 20,000 calories, drink a boost shake every hour, get total parenteral nutrition, and you will die of cachexia.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, what I'm here to tell you is those are absolutely going to speed up the dying process. There's my colleagues in the oncology world, in nurse and hospital wards, everywhere. When someone gets on something like TPN, they call it the death march. Okay. It's known as the beginning of the end. So that might scare some people who are listening to this. That's why there's better ways. That's why there's even, you can even get sort of keto friendly TPNs that are at least better. They're not very clean. They're a heck of a lot better. Request better options.
Yeah. At least they're not loaded with sugar. I mean, if you look at Ensure, the first couple ingredients are corn maltodextrin, which is GMO sugar. Then they have actual sugar. Then they have glucose, right? Exactly. Then they have fructose, right? So it's like first 4 ingredients, and then they have corn oil and soybean oil right afterwards.
And the only thing that ensures is your death.
Yeah.
Okay. And more metabolic, because cachexia is a state of metabolic dysregulation. It's not a calorie in, calorie out process. So there's a few things here. Cachexia is a metabolic process that you can see on laboratory investigation. Being skinny is not dangerous, does not kill you. Being cachectic does. 40% of cancer patients succumb to cachexia, so it's a big deal. But it's being treated. The reason why they succumb is they're being treated for it incorrectly. Okay, and they're terrified to do anything different because they're trusting at this point really bad, really outdated advice. Okay, so cachexia, the way we know someone's actually in cachexia is to look at their labs, not their bodies.
Yeah.
Okay, don't look at the bodies. The bodies mean nothing. Because you have fat people in cachexia, and you have super skinny people down to Skeletor levels that are not cachectic at all. The labs are the determining factor. We are actually looking for something known as sarcopenia. So all in combination, for someone to be in a state of cachexia, you have to have at least 2 things happening. Low albumin under 40, or under 4, and low protein under 7. If both of those are low, I know they're in a state of low-grade cachexia. If we also see low calcium below like 8.8 and low creatinine below 6, we're in full-blown cachexia. If you look at their creatinine and whatnot, you'll also see those are quite elevated. They're breaking down muscle very, very quickly. Right. You'll see elevated LDH, lactase dehydrogenase in these patients. That's when you know you're in a free fall of sarcopenia, cachectic state. Looking at someone, measuring them on a scale will never tell you anything. Not even body.
Exactly. And that's all just a simple, complete blood count and metabolic.
$12 out of pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
$12 out of pocket. So here's the difference. A story that I always highlight to my patients so they understand how big of a deal this is. We had people who survived unbelievable atrocities through the Holocaust, okay, through World War II, in these concentration camps that were literally starved down to nothing but bones, okay? Here's all these people that somehow survived those atrocities. And the second we burst open the doors and came in to liberate them, we handed them candy bars, okay? Do you know how many thousands more patients died right after that? We've lost count. We don't even know for sure. What happened and what stimulated an entire study of this was something called refeeding syndrome. Look it up, folks. This is what your doctors are doing to you when they put you on TPN, when they put you on Boost and Ensure, especially if you've been eating a metabolically flexible kind of diet, a lower carbohydrate diet, or been fasting, and they put that in. The danger of actually putting you into immediate end organ failure is very real. Okay, I've seen this. That's one of the things I've seen kill my patients over and over in the years. No matter how much I'm screaming this at them and their family members, they get bullied into this, you know, and I've luckily been able to pull people through it. But the only way personally I have ever seen to overcome cachexia is with a metabolic flexible state, whether that's high fat, low carb, whether that's fasting and ketone salt supplementation. Those are the only ways I have personally ever seen. And luckily people like Dom D'Agostino and others are doing research. We actually have several trials going on this. Know and have known for some time that more calories and more carbohydrates will never overcome this. And yet the first thing patients are told is eat whatever you want, eat a lot of pasta, eat a lot of bread. And they do, because their brains aren't working, right? They're very starved. And so in my cachexic patients, sometimes we need a little bit more protein. We never need more carbohydrate. Okay.
What are your thoughts about like branched chain amino acids or something like that?
Can definitely help. And if I have access to patients in an environment where they have an integrated practitioner that does IV therapies, bring on amino acid IVs, we bring on amino acid lipids. We do a lot of things to intervene. I even have through Charlie's Foundation, they make a cookbook called Blender Keto. Really good. We put that into feeding tubes. I've had patients in comas we put into feeding tubes like that, and they've completely come out multiple times. In fact, I have a few that will tell their stories someday of this. I have patients who've gone fasting because of bowel obstructions, 10, 12, 20, 30 days, and gone back in for a scan to start to initiate therapy when it seems like their bowels are moving again and no evidence of cancer. I've seen that over and over and over and over again. To much everybody's dismay. In fact, I just had that response yesterday from a patient who's been fasted because of a bowel obstruction from ovarian cancer, and everyone was ready to start blasting her with radiation and chemotherapy, and she went in to have a debulking first because they thought, well, maybe we can get some of the tumor out of the way now. They got in there, it wasn't cancer. She had a little twist in her colon. And she's been implementing fasting a lot. And this is a woman who had no response to conventional therapies, had multiple recurrences and progressions, and has not been on chemo for over 11 months now. So this is incredible that her oncologist, luckily, her oncologist is so excited about it. He's giving my book to every one of his patients, has been for months now, just watching her process. But do not underestimate the power of a free therapy, and do not get swindled and seduced by very outdated, misinformed dietary advice with regards to your cancer care.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. And so, cachexic patients can really do a lot of the things that we're talking about in this summit. And one of the concepts we talked about is kind of this feast famine, right? Where we're consuming similar amount of calories, roughly. We're not necessarily counting calories, but we're eating to satiety. We're just eating less often, right? So the meals will be larger typically, although, satiety points can change, and we're not trying to force feed beyond satiety. But if they were to reduce their feedings to 2 to possibly even 1 time a day, right? At times it can be really, really powerful.
So interesting with cachexic patients, their appetite goes away. It's part of the condition. Yeah. So what I have to do, because if they try and eat a big meal at one time, it backfires. Yeah. So actually, my folks who are actually truly in cachexia, not the skinny ones, okay, truly in a metabolic state of cachexia, I have them set an alarm, and I have their family and friends rally around them, and I have them eat something nutrient dense, typically high in fat, every hour. Yeah. And I tell them, I'm like, your stomach is the size of a fist. I want you to at least get a quarter of your fist into your body every hour. Okay. Then out, and it keeps them, then it starts to kind of reset and re-trigger the desire to eat again. It's like you're exercising a muscle that was a bit, depleted. And so that's really powerful. The other thing that can really help these patients overcome that blocked needing or wanting or having a desire to eat is medical marijuana. Okay. Oh yeah. And high CBD. This is one of the biggest gifts. The formulation that we created for our patients years ago was a CBD formulation for cachexia. We basically made our own shake. Because of FDA regulations, we did not have the $1 million to infuse into it, but I have a lot of patients who will tell you that it saved their ass multiple times. Yeah. So we're kind of having them build it themselves. It was like we kind of had the foundation and they added their own stuff with recipes. Eventually, we know we're going to get an investor who wants us to actually turn this in. We'd like it to be the next Boost or Ensure, but on a whole different ballgame, right? And so we have people interested, obviously, because it's a huge issue to worry about, because we see sarcopenia, cachexia, not just in cancer, but in cardiovascular, like congestive heart failure, AIDS processes, other muscular, like MS and Lou Gehrig's disease. We see that sarcopenic wasting and a lot of other chronic conditions. So this goes beyond the cancer patient, mind you, for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's been
Thrive Kids. That's actually how this formulation got started. Was a patient who had a child that was failure to thrive, and they didn't expect him to survive, and now he's like 8 years old. You know?
This is like a meal replacement with CBD.
Yeah.
Oh, such a great idea.
I know.
Yep. Really great. When it comes out, I'll invest in.
Right on.
There you go.
Great.
So let's talk about how you apply fasting. Like, what is your typical schedule like, let's say on like a week or monthly basis, or however you apply either extended fasting or intermittent fasting?
Perfect. Well, again, I had some accidental forced fasting early on.
Yeah.
But then going on with that process, I learned that it was actually good for my body to have a good 5 to 10 day fast each season. That's basically how I've been doing it 27 years at this point on purpose, at that point. The other thing you had mentioned before the show, that you had just had a really bad illness recently and kind of accidentally fasted, and it did wonders for you.
Oh, yeah.
I had a similar situation in Portugal many, many years ago. We don't know quite what it was. We don't know if it was my cancer on the move, what we were thinking was going on or what, but I got super, super sick, couldn't keep anything down, likely a bowel obstruction, but I ended up fasting for 2 weeks, laying on the couch with my sister-in-law while she was traveling in the US. I was staying at her place in France and couldn't eat a thing, couldn't get up, couldn't get off the couch, nothing. And at the end of that 2 weeks, it was like, finally, this is early on in my cancer diagnosis, I popped through something really big, and frankly, never went back to square one, where I had been really struggling for a couple of years to get me out of that place. So that was an incredible moment for me. And that's why it became a ritual seasonally. Today, I still kind of like to do like a 3 to 5 day fast minimum seasonally. But typically during the week, when you talked about how you can cope with three little ones under the age of 3 and life and your work and everything else, my jammin' days, I have 16-hour work days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, just back to back, really dense patient schedules. That's when I fast. And that's when I'm most on. And that's when I'm like clear as a whistle. Most of the time, I'll just not eat anything during that time, maybe a cup of broth here and there if needed, lots and lots of herbal tea and lots of water and sauna, and I work out and do all those things. Every once in a while, I'll eat very much. Maybe I'll have a light meal because my husband loves to cook and that's his love language. So I might eat something small with him in the evenings on those days, depending on our schedules and what's going on. So ultimately, maybe a 22-hour fast, for each of those 3 days. But that's huge. And if I've got something like holidays coming up, I will sort of preempt, because I know I give myself some flexibility. I am super metabolically flexible now, that if I overeat something in the carbohydrate place, the next day I can be just within a 13 to 14 hour fast. I'm already back into nutritional ketosis. I don't have to try anymore. Just going to bed and waking up, I go into ketosis. That's a beautiful place to be. But around the holidays, things where I know I'm going to maybe push my limits a little bit, I might thoughtfully do a longer fast before and after, just to kind of the pre-cleanup and the post-cleanup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really gives you more freedom in a sense. Time freedom, because you're not trying to prepare meals. Mental freedom, because especially, fasting, I always tell people it's like exercise. When you first get started, it's very uncomfortable. You don't feel good. You think it's a horrible thing. But as you start to train your body, you actually start to crave it and thrive under it. I know for me, I do 3 days a week where I do one meal, kind of like what you're doing, right? Yeah. So for me, it's typically Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. I just do one meal. And then my workout days where I do like strength training, I do 2 meals on those days. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday typically. And it's like, by the time I get to Wednesday, like my body's like ready for the 24-hour fast I'm about to do. I'm like craving it. Like I haven't eaten since lunch yesterday and I feel amazing. My body was craving kind of this more extended period of time, and you start to do that. And it does give you more freedom to where your body's more carb tolerant as you build this fasting muscle. So you don't have to, even though, you obviously want to make good food choices, you don't have to be quite as strict when you do eat because you're eating less often. And that's a great thing.
And and another strategy you just made me think of when you were describing fasting fast. I always, when I do international flights, I just don't eat because it's like poison. I don't want to haul all my food with me on a 12, 13-hour flight. And I get off that plane. When I used to eat, even if I brought my own food, I would have terrible lymphedema because of my own medical history for days after. If I don't eat now on international flights, I get no lymphedema.
Yeah.
That was aha. I tried that event a couple years ago. I was like, how did I never do this? And then even short flights, I just like kind of know on travel days, if I've got a total of 6 hours or more a day of travel, I just don't eat because it just to keep me ready. So especially like if I'm going to a conference, like we're ready to go speak at a conference in San Francisco this weekend, I won't eat on that, the day traveling, so that I'm crisp and clear for my talk, on Saturday type of thing. So that's how I've just learned how my body responds to how she wants it done. Yeah. And for people, I don't cheat because my body really freaks out. I can't do grains. I've got celiac, so I don't go Avgar. So I know my own places. It's not worth it to me to go and have a piece of, cornbread. It just isn't. But other people have a little more flexibility to that. But what I can cheat more on is I love a really good kind of keto margarita or a beautiful glass of wine, or seasons. I love when cherry season was in July and it didn't throw me out of ketosis, or peach season. Those are kind of my cheats. That's what I would want to gravitate for. I could give a crap about bread or grains.
It's a great seasonal fruit. That's
seriously
that's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. And that brings up just the fact that a lot of people think fasting is something maybe men can do. Fasting is very popular online, and most of the people that are teaching fasting are men, right? And so a lot of people are thinking, we have a lot of women speakers in this summit, and so a lot of people think, well, women can't fast, or fasting's bad for women. And so you're here, a woman fasting, right? And you've been doing this for 27 years, applying this, and so you're working with a lot of women that are fasting. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I love that you brought that up because there is a little bit of mythology around this. You want to work with someone's chemistry, but I'll be a little TMI for a moment, but I'm definitely moving in at 47 years old, moving into perimenopause, and some things are changing in my body. And I actually find right before my cycle, I can't fast. I get hungry. So I listen to my body. And as soon as the weather starts to get cold, the first bit, I'm like, I can't fast this week, but I'm doing things like more brothy. I'm still eating, maybe caloric restricting in those days. So I just listen to my own feedback. But as far as thyroid, the myth that this hurts your thyroid, my thyroid is working for the first time in my entire life by incorporating this on a regular basis. As far as, like stamina and adrenal function, for me, my particular SNP profile, my particular chemistry, this actually lessens the stress load because my body gets stressed when it has to digest. I've always joked with my husband, I wish I could be a breatharian. That's what please, can't I just be a breath? Because I feel like a shift. My chemistry is so sensitive. I'm a canary in the coal mine with so many foods and so many things because of my medical history and the types of things I was fed as a baby and whatnot. It's really messed with my microbiome that I'm just very vulnerable. So for me, feel better. Now, women who are concerned about this, that's why I don't have them do just water fast. That's why a bone broth is absolutely fantastic. You are not causing any problems with this. You're getting all of your major minerals and nutrients. And if you want, I love things like Dr. Cowan's Green. So drcowansgarden.com, you could sprinkle those into your bone broth, to get a little nourishment if you feel like I have to get something more in here, or take a little tablespoon of coconut oil if you just feel like you need something, but it's more emotional. It really is.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's really the biggest thing is it's a mental emotional block. And I think what people have to realize, again, it's like exercise. If you went to the gym, if you were sedentary, you're not worked out in, let's say, 10 years or your whole life, and you went to the gym and you worked out with a personal trainer, somebody that was really pushing you, you would be extraordinarily uncomfortable.
For days, a week.
Yeah, and you would, and if you based all of exercise off that one experience, you would think, this is terrible. How could people possibly do this? This can't be good for me. Yet in our society, of course, we know that it's not, right? We just understand that. And it's really the same with fasting. Your first experience, don't expect it to be comfortable or fun, right? It's not fun or comfortable. But as you start to build up, your fasting muscle, it gets easier, and you actually you start listening to the messages that your body gives you. You get a better intuition, a better overall perspective on food and your emotions.
I love that because most of us in the world today use food to treat our emotional being.
Right.
And especially if we use carbohydrate, sugary, starchy, rich foods, I often, I ask my patients, what sweetness are you lacking in your life that you have to feel it with this? That sometimes gets a little bit of a whoa kind of moment, but food is medicine, and it's love, and it's celebration, and it's connection. And so what I try and help folks realize is, there are other ways you can still sort of maybe have a bone broth evening with your girlfriend, like have them come over, or go, instead of going out to dinner or going out for cocktails with friends, go for a walk in nature, go do something else. You start to find other ways to connect and create new ritual and new sweetness, to bring in different sweetness from different aspects of your world around you.
Yeah, I love that. Like my wife actually likes, I typically fast through dinner when I'm doing my fasts, breakfast and dinner. I usually eat lunch typically, unless I'm traveling or something like that. And my wife loves it because dinner is when I'm with my family, and my little boys need a lot of help.
So you're like
I'm like 100% with them, making sure they're eating all their vegetables. I'm 100% with them, which makes her life a lot easier. So it's better. I'm more focused on whatever we're having a conversation about. And I just had a patient yesterday, actually, I was talking to about this, and she's like, well, what do I do? She's like, I like to go out with my friends. She's like, but I don't always get to pick the restaurant. And I said, well, do this. I said, the days you don't get to pick the restaurant and there's nothing, you already know the restaurant they're going to choose, and there's just not healthy food on there. That's your fasting day, and you're 100% focused on the conversation and the relationship. You're not thinking about the food. And then you get a turn at some point to pick the restaurant, okay? And then that's when you get a chance to, obviously enjoy the food with them. So it's not like you always have to restrict yourself, but being 100% focused on the conversation and the relationship, that's something we're typically not doing anyways.
Exactly.
And it'll make you a better friend. And I think it will change and shift your life in a positive way. That's what I told her. And she was like, you know what, that's true. So
I love that idea. That's a really good idea. And also I'll tell you, as a woman who's got a really good sisterhood posse around me, you'd be amazed after they have an experience of the way you live your diet or your lifestyle. When they join you on that, they're like, that feels really, that's easier than I thought. And now when I go out with the girl, we know exactly where we can safely go eat, or we go to each other's houses and everyone knows what to bring out. It's so funny now that we are easy with each other. We all recognize that this is good for all of us, not just for me. They all kind of did it to kind of humor me, to help me through my process, but they're like, well, dang, my Hashimoto's is totally improved. My, extra 20 pounds after baby is gone. My brain is working better. My skin is better. My libido is better. Like all these different things. Like they're like, could it really be that? I'm like, yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And then just, getting through the idea that you're being deprived, right? I think that's
huge.
That's so huge. And I know for me, that was a big deal. Like to me, just fasting seemed so lonely. And like I was being deprived, and it was really just a mental, emotional issue. I grew up in a big family, lots of kids. And so it was like, I didn't get attention. I had to fight for food. I had to eat my food faster than my brothers and sisters to get more. And so it really, as I started fasting, it really opened me up to emotional growth and spiritual growth in that area. And now it's like my wife or whoever can be eating whatever they want, even a food that like is healthy that I love, right? If I'm in a fasting mode, if I know I'm fasting, it has no impact on me.
I love it. That's exactly. Especially when you start to actually recognize that you are taking the garbage out every single time you take that break. That's why we called it break fast, right? Breakfast. We don't break fast anymore. We're in a constantly overfed and undernourished state in our world around us. And when you can have those little breaks, you start to gain clarity in other aspects of your life, not just literally in the GI tract.
Yeah. So true. I mean, this has been such a great discussion. I could probably talk with you for hours. We could talk all day about this. But with that said, what are some final words of inspiration for the listeners, and where can people find out more about you?
Well, definitely the Metabolic Approach to Cancer that I co-authored with Jess Kelly is a great start. Also on kind of Facebook, you can follow us under that same title of the book, or Optimal Terrain, or under my name, Nasha Winters. You can find me there as well and follow the type of things I post regarding topics such as this. Also, as far as a word of wisdom, I just, we're just living laboratories. You have to be willing to get outside of the conventional box and the conventional misguided wisdom and just try some things on for you. If one component, there's a million different ways to fast or to get into ketosis or to become metabolically flexible. Start to try them on for size and see what works for you. And as I said earlier, and the piece I'd like to leave everybody with is you don't have to be perfect at this to gain wonderful insight and gain wonderful benefit.
Love it. Well, there you guys have it. That's Dr. Nasha Winner's amazing metabolic approach to cancer. Definitely go out and get that book, especially for those of you that are practitioners or if you have a family history of cancer. Amazing book. I highly recommend it. Again, it's the best book I've read in 2018. Still have 2.5 months left, but I think you got the prize for that. So thank you so much for your contribution. And for all the listeners out there, I want to remind you of this, that fasting has the ability to unlock the dormant healing potential within you. It's safe, it's powerful, and it just might transform your life. So hopefully you enjoyed this interview. And if you've been enjoying the content we've been putting out, then I want you to consider owning the entire Fasting Transformation Summit for yourself. That way you get all the bonuses, you get the transcripts, you get the MP3s, so you can be listening to these interviews. And that's going to obviously improve your information load, your education. It's also going to help empower you. And I find it especially helpful if you're just getting started with fasting, whether it's intermittent fasting or an extended fast, to be listening to interviews like this, because it will inspire you and help you move through the uncomfortability and really get the results from it. So if you consider owning this, we would be really honored, and we'll see you on a future interview. Be blessed, everybody.